I wish this was the type of message that was only relevant to the kids. However, that's not the case. Due to the way our society is set up, this is the type of message that is rated E for everybody. Well, as I would say, every damn body. And I started to realize this past my teenage years and young adult years when I thought you would naturally stop caring what your parents thought about you, right? I thought that seeking parents' approval was something that you only did when you were a child, you were a teenager, or, at the most a young adult. After that, it would just naturally peel off like a snake's old skin. But that was not the case. And it was not the case for me or for most of anybody that I knew within my surrounding, right? And I'm talking about people who are 50, 60, 70 years old. And what I've realized is our parents' approval is something that was obviously ingrained into us, right? It was not only hardwired, but it was programmed. It was socially conditioned into us. And for good reason. When you're a child, you need the individual who is taking care of you's approval in order for that person to meet your perceived needs or your true needs, your real needs, as well as your perceived needs. However, we get to a place in our lives where we continue that relationship far past us needing that individual to meet those needs. As a matter of fact, I believe that the reason why we become so needy of our parents' approval in a very unhealthy way is because of how most of us are raised. Now, I'm not saying that everything is mom and daddy's fault, only most things, right? Well, if you were to ask your therapist, probably everything. No, what I'm saying is most of them did their best, or some of them did their best. A few of them did their best, right? Others were just going off of what they knew. They were on automatic pilot. They were living their lives in the way that they knew to live it. They took what they got in their childhood and they applied it to you. Most of them subconsciously because they really didn't do the work, right? They didn't apply the tools. They didn't get to a place of awareness. And so here you are as a child receiving conditional love. And it's not even real love, if I was to get down to it. It's conditional behavioral manipulation or conditional behavioral patterns. You were taught that if you wanted love, that if you wanted affection, that you had to do certain things, right? In order to get my attention, you had to stop throwing the tantrum. In order to get my affection, you had to stop acting in a certain way and instead act in another way. So this is how we're first trained. And when we're conditioned, like that Pavlovian dog who hears the ring of the bell and thinks to himself, oh, it's time to eat every time. When we're conditioned in such a way, we are continuously doing things that are outside of our true character. We are becoming inauthentic in the way that we live in order to get our parents' approval. And it doesn't just stop at our parents. It begins with our parents and oftentimes it ends with our parents. But in that in-between space, we are seeking everybody else's approval in the very same way. So in our friendships, in our familial relationships, and of course, in our intimate and romantic relationships, that's where most of it shows up, right? That's where we see that blueprint. Shout out to my girl. That's where we see the blueprint show up most, is in that intimate one-on-one romantic relationship setting where we are altering our behavior and we're looking for the other to alter their behavior in order for us to exchange this thing that we've come to know as quote unquote love. And don't get me wrong, love is real. Love is the realest thing I believe in life. Life is held together by the glue that is love. However, most of us have not allowed ourselves to get to know what love truly is. Instead, we know attachment, we know infatuation, we know lust and everything in between, right? But we are far from love because we've learned a conditionality. We've learned how to manipulate other people by doing things. We learn how, to have others manipulate us into doing things. And when I say manipulate, I'm not saying these are malicious, evil intentions. I'm not saying this is from a place of malice at all. Most of the manipulation that we do on the day to day is not malicious. We're simply looking to get somebody to do something that we believe is going to serve us. And we believe that the only way we can get our needs met is by somebody outside of ourselves doing something for us. And again, that starts with our parents. And so we end up in this vicious cycle where we're seeking our parents' approval for a lifetime and beyond. Probably you might, wake up to another lifetime, and you're still seeking these damn people's approval. Again, I've gotten to see this in older folks, those who I've gotten to have consultations with, coaching calls with, etc., where a 65-year-old man is still so desperately seeking his father's approval. A 50-something-year-old woman is desperately seeking her father or her mother's approval, even if that parent was not in the household. That's how powerful this is, right? We see this in multiple cases where a parent has been long gone. They've been deceased for generations at this point, right? Decades. And yet the child is still seeking that parent's validation. Please see me. Please accept me. Please want me, right? It could be any of those or any other of those, right? It could be whatever we believe we were lacking, whatever we believe we did not get from our parents. We may spend an entire lifetime trying to get that thing. And so I have to reiterate this message time and time again that it is time for us to stop looking for our parents' approval. And this is one of the most difficult tasks when all you've been doing your entire life is seeking their approval, even in ways that don't seem like it. Like some of us become so rebellious that we run from our parents, right? We try to break ourselves from that. But if we don't deal with those internal wounds, if we don't address the internal hurt, the internal pain, the relationship, that bond, that attachment that we have, if we don't address those aspects, we will never let them go. It doesn't matter how far we travel. I remember meeting two young, well, one was a young lady around my age, I guess you would say, and another lady, and they were talking to me, and we had a great discussion. But the younger lady, she was real quiet, real to herself, real secluded, and I could just feel there was something there, right? She could keep appearances, put the smile on, etc. And when we started to unpack, we realized there were some things with the mama, right? And I got downloads straight from spirit. I was like, "Ooh, there's something going on here with mom." She didn't even mention her parents once. And it turns out this girl had basically run from Germany to the United States just to be out of her mom's vicinity. And that was a boundary she created for herself in the physical, but yet she felt like her mom was still there with her every single day, in her head, playing like a record, playing like a one of those old vinyl records over and over and over and over again, moving the needle, record play again, move the needle, record play again. That's how she was living her life. And so the only way we can truly become free from our parents' approval, which actually starts to take or make everything else easier as far as everybody else's approval. Like if you're able to disassociate yourself or unattach yourself from the need of your parents' approval, it becomes so easy to do so with everybody else in your life, because this is the big one. This is the real deal right here. The parental approval cycle it's like Bowser and Mario. It's the last boss that you're about to face, right? It's the one. So we first have to address that, again, there is an internal wound that we perceive, obviously. So I don't believe we're necessarily broken. I believe we're always whole. We are powerful beyond measure. I believe we're spirit first. However, there are memories. There are what we call traumas, which is nothing more than, memories with heightened negative emotions connected to them. So there are these memories that are attached to us from a lifetime's worth of, upbringing, a lifetime's worth of experiences that we hold on to and we oftentimes keep subconsciously. And these become stories we tell ourselves, about our worthiness of love or the lack thereof, about our deservedness of the good of life or the lack thereof. And so when we realize that we have this narrative playing in our head, when we realize we have these stories playing, we can now make a decision to say, you know what? I no longer want to tell myself the story. Because when it's all said and done, we are the creators of our reality. And when we're living unconsciously or from the subconscious and are not bringing things to conscious awareness, we will feel like we are ruled by life. We will feel like life is happening to us as opposed to through us, by us, and for us, which is truly how it's happening, right? That's universal principle. That is universal law. We're the ones projecting our reality out, and it is mirroring itself back as our physical reality. If that's something you want to get deeper into, I got a whole bunch of content just on that subject matter. So we find ourselves in a place where we can make a decision based upon our awareness to say, you know what? I have this deep-seated need for my parents' approval. Where did this come from? And it may be, I felt I didn't have affection. So I continue to do things in order to get their affection. And then that manifests in the relationship dynamics I have. So maybe I'm always looking for a person's affection. If somebody's touching me or somebody's seeing me, even if it's in the most negative respect, I'm still looking for that to fill this void. So that's the first thing, is to recognize. Second is to accept that you have never needed another individual to fulfill your needs. I know this is something we like to teach in these dating spaces or in the therapy circles, etc., that you must find people who are able to meet your needs, but I believe that's a bold-faced lie, and it can be destructive in a lot of spaces, right? It is not the job of another person to meet your need. It is your job to meet your own needs. It is your job to go within and to find the very things that you seek from another. That's the only way life can give you those things back. That's why we have, these cliches like happiness is from within. Self-love is real. It's, all love is a self job. It's an internal job. And once we cultivate that love from within ourselves, then we can receive it from another. Then we can, give it to another, receive it to another. Then it's mirrored back to us as our physical experience. So first we have to recognize what wounds are there and why they're there and address them, right? Not to run from them or to pretend like they don't exist or, pretend like it never happened. We got to come to a place of acceptance and acknowledgement. Then we have to know again that we don't need anybody, including our parents, to fulfill those needs. We don't need them to fill a gap. There is no true void, right? And that wound, in the same way a physical wound, it's like the wound is an unnatural part of you. It is not a part of you. It is simply disharmony, dis-ease, right? A lack of ease in the body. And when you allow it to finally heal, you will get back to a place of wholeness, your natural state of being. And again, once we get to this place, which is 2 steps of awareness, past the awareness is now making the conscious decisions day in, day out of what type of choices am I going to make in the moment? Am I going to live from this place of guilt? Am I going to continue to give into the whims of my parental figures or those who represent them? Or am I going to start putting me first? Am I going to start pouring into me? Am I going to start loving myself? And this is action based, right? That next step, after we come to a place of awareness, acceptance, we now have to move into action. If you realize that, man, I have no boundaries with my parents, you have to start creating those boundaries for yourself and to start voicing yourself. And it becomes easier and easier the more you do it, but it's still going to have to be something that you do. And that's going to probably pain you at first. When I came out to my pops about my religious beliefs or the lack thereof, that I'm no longer a part of this thing that you raised us in, that you wanted us to be a part of, that means everything to you. I'm no longer a part of that. And, I can't be convinced otherwise. That was the most difficult conversation I had had in my entire life. And I had held on to that thing for almost 4 years. But yet when I finally made the decision to have that conversation, it felt like genuine and absolute freedom. I felt this weight lift off of me. I had a liberation of energy that came from that state. And I realize now that that was the greatest decision I made in that moment. But I had to confront it. I had to be honest. But I also had to come to a place where I recognized that I didn't need anybody else's approval or acceptance in order to be whole. I didn't need somebody else in order to make me who I was. So again, that's why we need to address that part first, because you'll still think to yourself, well, if I don't have my parental figures or if I let go of that attachment, then what's it going to mean for me and my identity, right? Who am I without them? Well, you are whole, complete, absolute. You are beloved. You are powerful beyond measure. That's who you are. So if you guys want me to get any deeper on the subject matter, let me know. Otherwise, I'd love to see your comments. I'd love to see where you are right now in your journey. Are you in a place where you have let go of your parents' approval, or you're letting go, or you're in a place where you're, still caught up in the ringer and still looking for them to feed you a little bit, even if you're holding on to that resentment? That's oftentimes what holds us to our parental figures far too long, is resentment. So that being said, a guilt-free plug of my first published book, Doing Me Guilt-Free, Breaking Free from People Pleasing and Unleashing Your True Personal Power. When it's all said and done, I believe the root of all evil is people pleasing, because we're using it as a means to get the things from other people that we're supposed to be getting from ourselves. And so we will do anything in that pursuit. So it's time for us to break those shackles, time for us to break those chains and step in our true personal power. So make sure to get yourself a copy of one of those by clicking the link in the description below. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Namaste and namasko.